Hey Amanda, how you doing? I'm just reading through your writing over here, and I think it's worth mentioning how important it is to be able to express yourself and your intent as a designer. So I think this is good. Keep this up throughout the entire class. I think it's fantastic when students are able to really express their conceptual development as well as their methodological approach to any assignment, really in a detailed manner. And I think that's relevant to your career in design as you'll be asked to describe and to communicate your intent throughout the entirety of your career. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate you including that. Let's jump right over to the ad. Whoops. Okay, I just want to kind of move that a little bit. Right there we go. Perfect. Okay, Amanda, it's a good ad. It's a good ad. It's very, very, very good. Everything here is I think it's really interesting what you've done here. You've given this illusion, or not illusion. You've given this kind of depiction of a family, but you're also showing the couple alone together, which is important for any vacation, for any family vacationing. And I think that little relationship right there is very, very interesting. And I think it adds a lot of impactful connotation to the ad itself. As far as technical execution goes, I think everything here is done very well. You've got your masked image beautifully. You've got your background image. You're showing good propensity with the application of type. The logo is placed beautifully. So I'm not too concerned at all about really your technical approach. There is one thing I would mention though. This image right here, it's I think we could use a bump in contrast a little bit. Right now, I think the tonal distribution of this image is lacking a little bit. In other words, the tonal variation between the lightest highlights and the darks are not great enough. And we can see it clearly in the sky because those clouds would have a lot more texture in a real, if we were actually viewing them. I think that the tonal distribution is kind of stripping the volume away from the clouds in the sky as well as the water. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword because you do have a cloudy sky here. So, I'm okay with that. I think it's more important here that you're emphasizing the family aspect of the ad than the beautiful sunny surroundings in the Caribbean. Do you see what I'm saying? I did work for a resort. It wasn't a Caribbean resort. I was on an advertising team doing magazine ads for a Mexican resort. And during a meeting one day, one of my coworkers had brought some images. We were going through the image search process, and one of the images had some clouds in the background, and they were not about that at all. They just did not want to see it. So in a true respect, I think that a perfectly sunny sky would be great, but we don't have that, and I'm okay with that. I think that ad is very, very strong in and of itself. I just think that what's going to happen here is when you do bump the contrast in this image right here, those clouds are going to become more prominent, and so is the water, the waves in the water. And I guess what I'm saying in a roundabout way is that's okay. I would rather see good technical approach here than something that would be considered a real world ad. Does that make sense? I mean, you're just starting out in Photoshop, and and this isn't technically a class in marketing or advertising development per se. So if this were a full-blown advertising class, I would say we definitely need to change that background image because it's not promoting what the client wants to promote. That's presumably sunny skies, beautiful, calm water, right? But that's not always the case, as we know. So the realism here, I'm perfectly fine with. I would like to see an increase in the tonal distribution of the image. And the best way to do that, I think, at this point right now is using a levels adjustment layer. I think I'm recommending a levels adjustment layer as opposed to a curves adjustment layer because levels adjustment layer is much more intuitive, a lot easier to work with. Other than that, I think you've really done a fantastic job. If there's one thing that this ad can be accused of, it's a lack of contrast. And I think we can see it especially up here. And I would recommend using purple type up here, and I would not recommend using the white stroke on the purple type. I have a announcement. Look for it coming up here real quick, and it has to do with stroking type, which I'm always against stroking type. I don't ever stroke type, nor do I let any work come out of my studio that has stroked type. I don't allow my designers to stroke type, and the reason being is because it actually works against you. Although it seems like it would make the type more legible, it actually doesn't, because the way based on the way it's assembled, it actually changes the shapes of the letters by increasing or decreasing the outer perimeter of the typeface. So I'm not a fan. Very, very, very rarely. Maybe in children's books I'll stroke type. Very, very rarely. So I would rather not see the stroked type. I would rather see just this purple color type here up here on top, and then follow it right here. The white down there is perfect. It's perfectly fine. I just think we just need to bump that contrast up a little bit right there. I would also recommend decreasing the leading. That is the space between these two lines right here. And decrease that a little bit. And grab your family and go. I would also reduce the type size here. I want to get this type grouped with this type, because they are, I mean, presumably they are related, right? Rejuvenate, relax, and repeat as far as your family goes. So what I would do is move the image down a little bit so that the border comes right about there or so. We'll remove that foreground, move the image down a little bit, bring this down, give yourself a little more room up there, and bring that subhead up top. Another thing that typically I don't do is center align type, but I'm okay with it here because I think it's working all right. Let me do something real quick here in this ad. Okay, so that's, we are not at a correct file size here. Let me just see. Yeah, we're 9 by 11.5 instead of 8.5 by 11. So that's a little odd. I would recommend adjusting that. But what I was going to do is, let me see, we're 9 here. So if we go to 4.5, there's our center. And yes, you've done a good job centering your type. For the most part, I see where I'm getting thrown is this. I'm getting thrown because right now this type here is centered between where this image ends. Well, actually, no. The type, it's all right. It's actually all right. This could be bumped a little bit to the left, because right now I don't think it's perfectly centered. This is, though. As I was saying before, though, I'm not a fan of center aligned type, but it works in this particular case. So those are my only recommendations moving forward. And again, very, very good ad. So I'm over 8 minutes. I really didn't want to do that. I'm trying to be as thorough as possible, though. So if you have any questions, let me know. And I'd like to see these changes for the final. I just noticed something else in terms of consistency. This horizontal rule right here should be the same size as that horizontal rule right now. This is a little thicker. I think the thinner looks a little better, so I would just thin that out, duplicate that, and bring it down. As I said, I'd like to see those changes made, sometime before your final portfolio at the end of the class in a few weeks or a couple of weeks here. But if you want to make those changes and run this by me, I'm more than glad to take a look at it and provide comments. All right, fantastic job. Thank you so much.